Hello. Welcome to Crime in Court. My name is Heather, and we are watching, or I should say, rewatching the 1993 Menendez brothers trial. For some, we're watching it for the first time. I am. Um, and others, you might be rewatching it for a second or third time. It's a very fascinating case. It is about California versus Eric and Lyle Menendez. They are brothers who went to trial and were convicted for the homicides of their parents, Jose and Kitty, who were um, they treated them very, very poorly. They maltreated them uh, to the point of severe psychological effects from that. So we've been talking about that. We've gone through the defense's case, and their strategy, their defense for this case is an imperfect self defense, meaning they were so terrified and afraid for their lives, for future essay, and just mm, uh, abusive behavior. I'm just going to say the word because I'm sure they'll say it, the attorneys and witnesses. So today we are going to go over part 10, which is the final part of the defense's witnesses. So we're going to go over the lay witnesses, the last part of them. Anyways, this one's going to be a shorter one just because this is the last portion of their lay witnesses, and just after this they rested. I'm going out of order because I wanted to I wanted to highlight the Oziel tapes last, and then, or next, and then last, we're going to go over the boys' testimony and then closing arguments. So no, you're not watching it out of order. I'm just kind of putting it out there out of order because I just want to bring more attention specifically to the boys' testimony. So, here we are, like I said, lay witnesses for the defense, and let me unmute you here. So this is um, the first witness. Who is the first witness? Sorry, it's Leslie Zoller, who is the lead detective. Sorry, I didn't have that ready for you. All right, so here we go.
All counsel and both jury panels as well, and to everyone, good morning. Glad to see you all here, and we're out ready to proceed with the testimony. The defense may call its next witness.
At this time, Your Honor, the defense would call Detective Zoller.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause apprehended before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Just take the stand and state your name for the
Leslie H. Zoller.
Detective Zoller, were you present in the courtroom when one or both, if I remember correctly, of the Menendez brothers were questioned about some papers that were on the coffee table in the family room of the Menendez home on August 20th, 1989?
Yes.
And you recall that line of questioning had to do with those papers emanating from a particular educational institution?
I don't recall what the substance of the testimony in reference to the papers was.
Now, you were the investigating officer at the scene of this homicide, correct?
That's correct.
And is it part of your responsibility at the scene to determine what evidence or property should be collected and saved for either future examination or future testing or future use?
To a certain extent, yes.
Were there other investigators who were also charged with that responsibility that night?
Well, in addition to the investigators, there's the Identification Bureau that processes the crime scene.
And there are things that they would choose to take because it fits in with their scientific evidence gathering function?
That's correct.
Let me show you two photographs that were previously marked. One of them was 278 and the other 250. Do you recognize, with respect to 250, the larger one, what piece of furniture it depicts?
This is the coffee table in the den.
That's the scene of the homicide.
That's correct.
And 278. Do you also recognize what's depicted there?
Yes, this is the photograph. 278 depicts the floor right below the coffee table and the leg to one of the legs of the coffee table.
Okay. Now, calling your attention to there's a printed document of some sort on the floor next to the leg of the coffee table, correct?
That's correct.
And it's of contrasting ink colors, blue and white, correct?
That's correct.
And can you determine whether that document pertains to an educational institution of some sort?
Yes.
And what tells you that it has to do with a school?
Because it says UCLA on it.
Okay. Doesn't it also help, though, that it says how to enroll?
Yes.
And the reference to UCLA on it is in the right-hand edge of what we can see of this document, and above UCLA, the word park appears.
That's correct.
Now, is there any handwriting on that form that you can see?
No.
Did you examine that form the night of August 20th or the morning of August 21st, 1989?
I did not examine it, no.
Was it taken into evidence or into the custody of the Beverly Hills Police Department?
No, it was not.
Now, can you also see right next to that particular enrollment, it looks like an enrollment information sheet, does it not?
It does.
Now, you see right next to that on the floor, there is a white envelope.
Yes.
And can you see the postmark on that envelope on the floor?
Yes, I can see it.
And what is the postmark of that envelope?
It says Princeton, and I can't read the date on it.
Can you see the New Jersey part? NJ.
No.
Now, turning your attention to 250, the larger photograph, that's the top of the coffee table, correct?
That's correct.
Would you describe for the jurors what items appear to be on the top of the coffee table that you can see from that photograph?
In the photograph, there's a folder, and it's labeled Lyle at the top of the folder with paperwork on top of it, envelopes. Next to that is a Michael Jackson cassette tape, a lighter.
Cigarette lighter?
That's correct. A Kleenex, another paper with a form paper that's been printed, another napkin or Kleenex, a watch, a glass with some liquid in it, another glass with a spoon, and
That's the glass that you previously testified at one time appeared to hold blueberries in a white substance?
that's correct.
Okay.
Some type of a leather-bound notebook with a napkin and some more paper on it.
That paper that you're just pointing to, the one next to the napkin, says something Ford, does it not?
Yes.
Like the name of the dealership?
Yes.
Okay.
And a small piece of paper next to that with another cigarette lighter, a pipe, newspapers with what appears to be a TV guide on top of the newspapers.
That's the Los Angeles Times TV section, is that what that appears to be?
It appears to be, yes.
What were the dates on the newspapers?
I don't recall, no.
Did you examine them?
I looked at them, I didn't examine them, no.
Now, I want to call your attention to this other envelope, the one that's on the top of the pile, that's on the right edge, as you look at that photograph of the coffee table. Does that envelope appear, can you read on the return address, the top line of the return address?
Yes.
And what does it say on the top line of the return address?
University of California.
And then if you look at the third line of the return address, can you see the city, Berkeley?
It does appear to be Berkeley, yes.
And you can see the postmark very clearly, can you now?
Yes,
It's
it
also
does.
saying Berkeley.
That's correct.
And to the best of your knowledge, UCLA is not at Berkeley, correct?
That's correct.
There is a campus of the University of California known as Cal that is at Berkeley.
That's correct.
Now, where in that photograph do you see anything filled in by Mrs. Menendez?
I don't see anything in this photograph at all.
Where's the pen?
I don't see a pen.
Where's the pencil?
No pencil.
No crayons, nothing, no writing implements. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You testified previously, Detective Zoller, about the two rifles that were located inside the Menendez home. Do you remember that?
I do.
And you testified, I believe, that the rifles were located in Mr. Menendez's closet. Is that what your testimony was?
That's correct.
Now, subsequent to that testimony, did you go back to your file and observe a report written by other Beverly Hills officers that indicated that the rifles were in the closet that had the mirrored closet doors?
That's correct.
And then did you look at your crime scene video and note that the closet with the mirrored closet doors was Mrs. Menendez's closet?
That is also correct.
So when you testified under oath here that it was Mr. Menendez's closet, were you lying?
I was in error.
You made a mistake, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're an experienced police investigator, is that right?
Yes.
And this was your case from the moment you were called to the scene, is that right?
Mine along with Detective Linehan, that's correct.
And did you, after you had looked at this report from the other officers and viewed the crime scene video, called me up and say, Miss Abramson, I made a mistake on the stand?
No, you brought it to my attention.
Several days later,
Correct.
But you didn't call me when you found out, is that right?
That's correct.
Are you familiar with a business in Van Nuys called the Target Range and Gun World?
Yes,
And is that business located on Cohasset Street in Van Nuys?
it is.
And is the Target Range and Gun World a two-part business, if you will?
Yes, one is on the south side of the street, the other is on the north side of the street.
And the part that's on the north side of the street, is that a gun store in which firearms and ammunition are sold?
It is.
And the part that's on the south side of the street, would you describe what that is?
It's the gun range, a shooting range.
And it's an indoor range, is it not?
Yes, it is.
The shop that sells the guns, is that a relatively small store?
Yes, it is.
And at that particular store, do they, or did they in 1989, sell Fiocchi ammunition?
Yes, they did and they still do.
And did you, in fact, well, strike that, as part of your investigation, did you attempt to track down the various outlets in the Southern California area that sold Fiocchi ammunition?
Yes.
And was that because it had been indicated to you by the Scientific Investigation Division that the kinds of shotgun ammunition that was used here was Fiocchi type?
That's correct.
And did you get some sort of printout from the Fiocchi people showing which various gun outlets sold their ammunition in August of 1989?
Yes, I did.
And Target Range and Gun World was one of them, correct?
That was on their list.
And do you recall personally going to the Target Range and Gun World to investigate?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall when you did that?
Not exactly. I remember getting the Fiocchi information, I believe, in January of 1990, so it was after that. I would assume in the next month.
But it wasn't any event before Eric and Lyle Menendez were arrested?
Before they were arrested, that's correct.
And do you recall whether or not you either showed a photograph of Eric and Lyle Menendez to the employees or left a photograph with them?
I showed them photographs of the defendants at the time I was there, and they indicated there was other employees that were not present, so I left the photos with them.
Are you familiar with any other indoor firing range and gun store combination in Van Nuys?
No, I am not.
Are you familiar with any other indoor firing range and gun store combination in the Valley?
There's one in the, it's either Agoura or Calabasas area. And there's also one in, I believe it's Reseda. It's Reseda Boulevard and Parthenia. That's all I can recall right
And
now.
are they set up the same way with the Target Range across the street?
No, they're all one store.
So this is the only one that's two-part.
That's correct.
Now, I want to take you back to your original interview with Amanda Adams Geyer. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell us the date of the first interview you had with her?
It was March 14th of 1990. It was about 3 o'clock, if I recall.
And you interviewed her at the Big Five store in San Diego?
Yes, I did.
You're sure it was a Big Five store, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Like the closet, is that right?
Just kidding.
Now, do you recall asking...
She said, "You're certain about that, right? Like the closet, right?" And then obviously the prosecution objected to that, but pretty funny, like mistaking which closet the firearms came from.
She was then Amanda Adams, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, she hadn't married Mr. Geyer yet? Okay. Did you, when you interviewed her, show her the paperwork for the sale of the Mossberg shotguns that's been introduced into evidence here?
Yes,
And I believe those are technically called ATF 4473 forms.
that's correct.
So you had already obtained those papers from the Big Five store, correct?
I believe at the time that I interviewed her, they were still at the store and possibly still in their notebook.
But I mean, you had them. You had been shown them before you interviewed her.
That's correct.
And were you also shown the logbook in which their inventory of gun book in which the purchasers sign off when a gun is purchased?
That's correct also.
Okay. So she saw all 4 of those documents.
Yes.
And did she tell you during the course of the interview that she had no recollection whatsoever of that sale?
She said she didn't remember the sale at all. That's correct.
And she couldn't tell you anything about the people or person?
That's correct.
She couldn't tell you anything about the time of day?
That's correct.
She couldn't tell you anything about anything that the person or people might have said during the course of the sale?
That's correct.
So in other words, she was a specifically useless witness, very useless if she can't tell you anything about the person who did it.
Now, changing the subject, did you attempt to verify the date upon which Dr. Oziel reactivated his home alarm system?
Yes.
And did you determine that it was on March 16th, 1990?
Yes.
Your Honor, that's all I have on direct in front of both jurors.
All right, any examination on behalf of Lyle?
No, Your Honor.
Any cross-examination?
Thank you. Okay, Zoller, you were asked questions about the crime scene photograph that you have in front of you
Yes.
at the coffee table.
That's
And you were
correct.
asked whether you had picked up the bloody UCLA documents on how to enroll and on parking.
That's correct.
Now, on that day, August 20th, or the early morning of August 21st, did you know that the defendants were the killers of their parents?
No, I did not.
On that day, did you have any reason to believe that you should seize those documents to see if there was any writing within those documents?
No.
In fact, you saw to it that photographs were taken of the crime scene so that the jury could see what was next to the victim in this case, Mrs. Menendez, correct?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the question.
Rephrase the question.
Were you the one, Detective Zoller, to make sure that photographs were taken at the crime scene?
Yes,
And that is one of the photographs that was taken at the crime scene next to Mrs. Menendez, is that correct?
that's correct.
And these letters, documents from UCLA, were found next to Mrs. Menendez?
That's
I
correct.
object to the form of the question, Your Honor. They are neither letters nor are they plural documents from UCLA.
Rephrase the question. The answer is correct.
This document that you see in that photograph in front of you, that's Exhibit 250, is it?
That's correct. 250 is the larger photo.
And the documents that you see in the other photograph,
Or just 278.
278, is that the document that was found next to Mrs. Menendez?
That's correct.
And are those bloody documents?
They are.
And are they identified as UCLA documents?
I'm going to object again, Your Honor, to plural. There's only one document.
How many documents are there?
That's from UCLA.
Mr. Zoller?
There's one document.
Is that a multi-page document?
I can't tell by the photo, and I don't recall.
But it indicates how to enroll and also has information on parking?
It's from the registration office, and it says park, but it's cut off with UCLA under it, so I can assume it's parking.
And on the table, Exhibit 250, there were other documents actually on the table that weren't next to Mrs. Menendez on the ground, correct?
That's correct.
And one of those documents was a letter from the University of California at Berkeley.
Yes.
I object to the form of the question, Your Honor. It calls for speculation.
All right. Objection sustained. The answer is correct. You're referring to the envelope. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Without reference to what might or might not be inside it, why don't you just refer to it as an envelope?
Is it simply an envelope that you see in Exhibit 250?
It's an envelope with paperwork underneath, but the only thing that's identifiable is the envelope itself.
And you likewise did not seize that envelope, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, you had testified earlier, Detective Zoller, that you found 2 rifles in the closet of the parents, Mr. and Mrs. Menendez. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And your testimony is it was in Kitty Menendez's closet. That is, each parent had their own separate closet.
I think I testified that it was in a closet that I thought was Jose Menendez's closet.
And is it correct that it was in Kitty Menendez's closet?
That's correct.
And these two 22 rifles, were they 22 rifles?
Yes, they were.
They were unloaded? Is that
Yes.
correct? And they were propped up against the wall in the closet?
Yes.
And you didn't seize those rifles either, did you?
I did not know.
Was it because you believe that shotguns were used in the killings?
Object to the form of the question, Your Honor.
All right. It's leading. Rephrase the question.
Why was it that you didn't seize these 2 rifles, 22 rifles?
Because the victims were shot with a shotgun, and I didn't feel that they were evidence to the crime.
You were asked questions about Amanda Adams, that you went down to San Diego on March 14th, 1990.
That's correct.
Did you first speak to the manager at the Big Five store in San Diego, Reggie Clevitt?
Yes, I did.
And sometime later you spoke to Amanda Adams?
Yes.
Now, had you recently gotten information about the possible purchase of shotguns by these defendants shortly before your trip to San Diego on March 14th of 1990?
Yes, I did.
Was that just several days before?
Approximately a week before.
And when you went to this particular Big Five store in San Diego and you spoke to Mr. Clevitt, did you get information that you connected to the defendants in this case?
Yes.
And that was a document indicating that a Donovan Gaudreau's license had been used in the purchase of 2 shotguns?
That's correct.
Now, when you got this information, did you get further information from Mr. Clevitt about who the salesperson was?
Yes, I did.
And did you locate that person?
Yes, she was also working at the time.
When you spoke to, and that is Amanda Adams?
That's
When
correct.
you spoke to her, was she out in the store?
Yes, she was a salesperson in the store.
Where was she in particular?
I don't recall. She was not in the gun department, which is where I was.
But she was actually on the floor that she would be trying to help out customers?
I believe so. She might have been in the back storage area. I'm not sure whether she was actually in the store, on the store floor.
At the time that you spoke to her, did you show her the documents?
Yes.
Reflecting the sales?
Yes, I did.
And did she have time to think about the sales?
Objection, Your Honor. It calls for speculation.
Rephrase the question.
Would you describe your first contact with Amanda Adams?
I asked the manager, Reggie Clevitt, who the salesperson was. He identified Amanda Adams. I asked if she was working. He said yes. She was summoned over to the area. As she came over, I explained the investigation briefly and showed her the ATF forms and asked her if she recalled the sale depicted on the forms.
Now, did you take her back to a back room so that she could sit down and take a close look at the documents?
No, I did not.
How long did this discussion take between yourself and Amanda Adams?
Totally no more than 10 or 15 minutes.
And at that time, she told you that she didn't recall this particular sale, or these sales.
That's correct.
Sometime later, you got further information from her after having a chance to reflect on the sales. Is that correct?
Your Honor, it calls for speculation.
Objection sustained to the following question.
Sometime later, Detective Zoller, did you get detailed information from Amanda Adams regarding the sales?
Objection. Hearsay. No foundation for acceptance.
Objection overruled. The question and answer.
Yes, I did.
Have nothing further to find out.
You're aware of the fact that Amanda Adams testified in front of the grand jury in 1992?
Yes, I am.
And that in front of the grand jury, she again had absolutely no recollection of the sale?
I'm not aware of what she testified in front of the grand jury.
The only time you got any information from her that was different from that was in June of 1993, correct?
That's correct.
So for 3 years, she never gave you any indication that she remembered anything about the sale. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
She didn't call you back the next day and say, gee, now I remember, after the March 14th interview, did she?
No,
Nor the next week, nor the next month, nor the next year.
not until in June of 93. That's correct.
And you contacted her in order to prepare her to testify at that time, isn't that right?
I called her in reference to her additional information.
Well, how did you know about the additional information if you hadn't talked to her yet?
I got the information from the district.
I just want to point out that the prosecution totally made it seem like this witness called back right away and was like, "Oh, by the way, I just remembered something." And if it weren't for Leslie or Ms. Abrams and her questioning and asking the right questions, we wouldn't know that she held on to that story of I don't remember anything for 3 years. 3 years she didn't remember anything, and then all of a sudden she just has a memory? No, it doesn't usually work that way, but I don't know.
Secretary's office
And where did they get it from?
from Amanda Adams.
So they talked to her before you did. Is that right?
That's correct.
Before you did, at least in June of 1993.
That's correct.
And who in the district attorney's office do you believe talked to her before you did in June of 93?
Mrs. Bozanich.
Now, you did have with you in March of 1990 photographs.
Mrs. Bazanich talked to her in 93 when she changed her story in front of a grand jury, saying that she does sort of remember now all of a sudden. So there's that. This is so shady. District attorneys should not be speaking. I mean, it's okay to prep a witness, whatever prepping is. It's like, but you can't say like, I'm going to ask you these specific questions and this is how you should answer and whatnot. But you don't know what goes on in a meeting behind closed doors with an attorney, a district attorney trying to win their case and might do a little something a little deceptive to win it, potentially. Some district attorneys are like that. Or they just are so thirsty for what they absolutely believe is justice, which really isn't.
Of Eric and Lau Menendez, correct?
That's correct.
In fact, you had them arrayed in like a lineup type card, correct?
Each one in a separate card. That's correct.
Right. And you showed that photo array to Miss Adams.
That's correct.
And she was unable to identify, well, let me see. Actually, didn't she pick out a photograph of someone totally unrelated in one of those spreads and said, this person looks familiar, or words to that effect?
That's correct.
And did you then follow up and ask her, did that person look familiar in reference to this sale?
That's the question I asked her.
Yes, and then she told you once again, I have no recollection of this sale.
That's correct.
Think about how many sales, if you're a salesperson and you work at a store and you ring people up all day, think of how many people you ring up. You're not going to remember individual sales, usually, unless there's something that really strikes you as odd. But for the most part, you don't remember. And even so, you're not going to remember 3 years later some details about this person. If you didn't remember it right away, chances are you're not going to remember it 3 years later, some random customer in a store.
Now, you didn't show her these photographs while she was waiting on customers on the sales floor, did you?
No, I did not.
It was rather important for you to establish who purchased, strike that. At the point when you went to San Diego to look for shotgun purchases, you had already received information that Eric and Lau Menendez had some conversations with a Dr. Oziel, and Dr. Oziel had talked to his girlfriend about those conversations, had you not?
That's correct.
That's what sent you to San Diego. Judalon Smith told you.
That's correct.
So you certainly were looking for a link between Eric and Lau Menendez and the purchase of shotguns.
I was.
That's why you took their photographs, to show to any salesperson who might have waited on them.
That's correct.
This was a very important potential piece of evidence in your investigation at that point, was it not?
I thought so.
And I take it that you attempted to talk to this person who sold guns to a supposed Donovan Goudreau, who you knew was a former friend of Lyle's, that you attempted to talk to her in an atmosphere where she would understand what you were doing and you would understand what she was saying.
Yes.
And was there some reason, Detective Zoller, when she told you that she had no recollection whatsoever of the transaction, that you didn't call her back a few days later and ask her, well, have you had time to think about it? Has anything, come to mind?
No, I did not call her back.
And wasn't that because you didn't think she had any memory for you to ask her about?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
I didn't think she had any more to add, is why I didn't call her back.
And she really couldn't tell you anything except what part of the forms were in her handwriting and what part weren't.
That's correct.
She didn't even remember the driver's license.
That's correct.
Do you know if she was interviewed by anyone before she testified in 1992 before the grand jury?
I'm not sure. No,
Did you interview her?
no.
Were you present outside the grand jury room when this case was being presented to that body?
Yes, I was.
And did you see her there?
Yes.
Did you talk to her?
Yes.
Did you talk to her about the subject matter of her testimony before the grand jury?
I don't believe so, no.
Do you know which, if either, of the prosecutors in this case talked to her about the subject matter of her testimony before she testified before the grand jury?
I don't recall.
Did either prosecutor in this case come to you at the time of the grand jury testimony of Ms. Geyer and tell you she has new information?
No, they did not.
That didn't happen until June of 1993.
That's correct.
Now, what significance did you think it had? I'm changing the subject. What significance did you think it had which piece of paper fell off the coffee table and wound up on the floor next to Mrs. Menendez? What did that mean to you as a homicide investigator?
It didn't have any significance to me.
You didn't think, did you, that the shooters somehow placed that particular document on the floor next to Mrs. Menendez, did you?
No, I did not.
And it's true, is it not, that a very large number of photographs were taken of the family room den area that night?
That's correct.
And that would be standard procedure to photograph a good deal of the crime scene.
Yes.
And in fact, there were also photographs taken of just about every other room in the house also,
That's correct.
but not as extensively.
That's correct.
And no photographs were taken of the rifles in the closet.
No, there were not.
I have nothing further.
Anything else?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Detective Zoller, you indicated that in about June of this year, you were contacted by the district attorney's office
That's correct.
to get a hold of Amanda Adams?
Yes.
And did Mrs. Bazanich contact you?
Yes.
Did she indicate that...
I'm going to object to what Mrs. Lozanne said, Your Honor, based on the hearsay.
Overruled. Not received with the proof of the matter asserted, but just to reflect what was said.
Did she indicate to you that she had received a call from Amanda Adams and that Amanda Adams had some information for you?
Yes.
Did you call Amanda Adams at that time?
I did.
Did you get a further report at that time?
I did.
Do you recall what she told you?
I'm going to object to this, Your Honor. It's hearsay, no foundation.
Overruled.
Yes.
What did she tell you?
She told me that she remembered after thinking about it, remembered the sale of the guns, that one individual came up and knew exactly what weapon he wanted to buy to purchase. He asked for two, and she asked whether he wanted her to show her how to work it, and he said no, and that he just got the guns and purchased them. There was not much time spent with her.
And that is consistent with how she testified in this case before these
Objection, Your Honor,
jurors.
calls for a conclusion on part of the witness.
Sustained.
Nothing further at this time, then.
All right, anything else on this subject?
Is that common in your experience, Detective Zoller, that a witness with utterly no memory 3 years later comes up with details like that when they haven't been hypnotized or drugged or suggested to in some way?
Objection, argument over complaint.
Sustained.
Nothing further.
All right, let me see counsel at the sideline for a moment. We're going to be continuing on for a little bit with the blue jury only, so what I'll ask is that the gold jury go back to the jury room, and before the noon hour, we'll have you come back and give you more information. But at this point, go to the jury room. Don't discuss the matter with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. Please be available in the jury room so that we can get you back here, and we'll let you know what's going on as soon as we complete this bit of testimony. All right, that jury has left, and you may continue the examination of the witness before the Eric Menendez jury only.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I have two plastic bags, each of which contains a pin tab spiral notebook. And each bag also contains a Beverly Hills property evidence tag. What I'd like to do is mark 320, the yellow one, 320, and the blue one, 321.
All right.
Now, Detective Zoller, on November 17th, 1989, you interviewed Craig Signorelli at the Baker Square restaurant in Goleta, California. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And Goleta is in proximity to the campus of the University of California in Santa Barbara. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And during the course of that interview with Mr. Signorelli, he relayed to you what he said was a statement that he had received from Eric Menendez concerning how Eric and his brother killed their parents, correct?
That's correct.
And did he tell you that he hadn't told anyone else about this confession that Eric had made to him.
That's what he said.
And he told you he was worried about having this information.
Yes.
And so because he was worried, he wrote it down in a school book in case something happened to him.
That's what he said.
In January 25th, in fact, 1990, did you serve a search warrant on the home of Craig Signorelli looking for school books, such as the type one would write something in?
Yes.
And the two items that are in front of you, 320 and 321, are those two school-type notebooks that you removed from his home?
Yes, they are.
And did you, after you removed those notebooks, carefully examine them to see if, in fact, they contained any statement by Eric Menendez detailing how he and his brother killed their parents?
Yes.
And there is no such information in there, is that correct?
No.
It's not correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. That's all, Your Honor.
Any examination by the prosecution?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Detective Zoller, was it January 25th, 1990 that you served a search warrant on, it wasn't Signorelli's school home, it was his family home, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And that was in Calabasas?
Yes.
And that's his mother's house?
That's correct.
Now, pursuant to that search warrant, you recovered 2 notebooks, correct?
Yes, I did.
Exhibits 320 and 321?
That's correct.
Now, Coach Turner?
Yes.
Now, the blue notebook is the one that was marked as Exhibit 321, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, this notebook indicates that there's 70 sheets in the notebook, is that right?
That's correct.
Did you count the number of sheets in that notebook?
I did.
How many sheets are in that notebook?
60.
You're sure that some sheets have been torn out?
Yes.
Is that the way that you received it on January 25th?
It is.
1990? Now, you've indicated that it was November 17th, 1989 when Mr. Signorelli gave you the information about the confession that Eric Menendez made.
Yes.
With respect to your testimony that he also had given you information that he had written down, information that he had on Eric Menendez. in a
Objection, Your Honor, that
notebook.
misstates his testimony.
Restate the question. Objection sustained.
I'll ask another question.
Your Honor, I'd like to approach at this point.
Well, we haven't heard a question. There's no reason to approach.
Question is, did Craig Signorelli indicate to you that he had written down some information in a notebook?
Yes.
And was that information gotten by you on November 17th, 1989?
It was.
And was that one of the things that you were looking for when you served the search warrant on Mrs. Signorelli's house on January 25th, 1990?
Yes.
I'm showing you Exhibit 321.
Your Honor, I'd like to approach.
One moment.
Within this notebook, Detective Zoller, did you find a notation that appeared to be by Craig Signorelli about information that he had on Eric Menendez?
Your Honor, I would like to approach. Object to the questions calling for hearsay.
Seriously, how many times does she have to ask to approach? And why this judge always refuses her or is so rude to her really annoys me. But anyways, let's see what he says.
Objection overruled. Did they answer the question, yes or no?
Overruled.
Yes.
All right. Did you want to approach regarding that?
I think there's going to be any further questions along those
There is
lines.
going to be.
All right. You may approach. All right. Anything else?
Nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
He lets her approach, but after the question is answered. So what was the question? Let's listen to that one more time.
Craig Signorelli about information that he had on Eric Menendez?
Your Honor, I would like to approach. Object to the questions calling for hearsay.
Objection overruled. Did they answer the question, yes or no?
Yes.
All right. Did you want to approach regarding that?
I think there's going to be any further questions along those lines. Your Honor, I'd like to approach.
One moment.
Within this notebook, Detective Zoller, did you find a notation that appeared to be by Craig Signorelli about information that he had on Eric Menendez?
Your Honor, I would like to approach. Object to the questions calling for hearsay.
Objection overruled. Did they answer the question, yes or no?
Yes.
All right. Did you want to approach regarding that?
I think there's going to be any further questions along those
There
lines.
is going to be.
All right. You may approach. All right. Anything else?
Nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
Okay. Any redirect?
One question. Detective Zoller, what was on the 10 pages that were pulled out of the notebook? Do you know?
No, I do not.
Nothing further.
Anything else? All right. Thank you. You may step down.
Thank you.
Both juries back in the courtroom. There was some other matter that counsel wanted to put on the record.
Yes, ma'am. There was testimony earlier during I believe Dr. Connor's testimony, where we identified letters, a group of letters that were taken from a box that was in Mom Menendez's car. One of those letters, which we marked as 316.
There's any reason why the jury should be here?
Was this evidence only in relationship to the Lyle Menendez jury?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Higher issues.
All right. Then we'll deal with it only in relationship to that one jury. And as to both juries, what's happened is that there was a witness who was scheduled to be here and testify, but that witness has had difficulties in his personal situation in relationship to the fires that have occurred, and that witness won't be able to be here today. And therefore, other than this brief evidence that is going to be offered by the defense that Ms. Lansing was referring to in relationship only to the Lyle Menendez jury. There won't be any more evidence to be offered today. The lawyers and I have some matters to discuss, and we'll be discussing them this afternoon. And after those discussions, tomorrow I'll be in a position to confer further with counsel regarding the status of the case as far as when you can expect to have the case go to the juries for deliberations. So at this point, let me remind you all not to discuss this case among yourselves, not to discuss it with anyone else, not to form any final opinions about the matter, and don't permit yourselves to be exposed to anything about this case in any form outside of the courtroom. You must make your decision based only on what happens in the courtroom and my instructions on the law. And we'll see both juries back here tomorrow at 9 o'clock. I'll ask that the gold jury just stay here just for a moment so we finish off this one issue, and then we'll let you go as well for the balance of the day. So we'll see both juries back here tomorrow at 9 o'clock. The jurors have now left, the gold jurors, and strike out the blue jurors, and now you may proceed in relationship to the gold jury.
Thank you. There was testimony previously that a group of letters were removed from a box which had been in Lyle Menendez's car at the time of his arrest, and those letters were marked and identified. One of the letters, 316, begins, "Well, Lester," and it's dated November 18th, 1987. That letter came from Dr. Lester Summerfield's file, Mrs. Menendez's therapist, and not from the box as previously indicated.
All right, that stipulation of the parties is noted as to that particular letter as to where it originated. And at this point, then, we'll excuse the gold jury as well until tomorrow at 9 o'clock. What I do is permit the witness to testify outside the presence of the jury. I want to hear exactly the questions that are going to be asked and then evaluated at that point. But you can call her. She's in the courtroom, is she?
Yes.
All right. And whoever is going to do the examination may do so. All right, step forward, please, and stand behind the court reporter.
Cynthia Dawn McPhee, MCPHE. Could you spell your first name? CYNTHIA.
All right.
Ms. McPhee, do you know a person by the name of L. Jerome Oziel?
Yes.
And can you tell the court when you first met Mr. Oziel?
Crap. It's muted. So sorry. So this is the I couldn't tell if the jury's in or not. This might be just a voir dire, but maybe not. I couldn't tell from what the judge said. It sounded like he was sending the Lyle jury back out and then they were gonna do a voir. I don't know. But so this particular witness is Cynthia McPhee. And she is Dr. Oziel, our favorite Dr. Oziel from the prosecution's star. It was the prosecution's star witness. So this is his former lover and live-in babysitter. So here we go.
In 1981.
And can you tell the court under what circumstances you first met him?
I was hired as his babysitter.
And did that involve you then living in his home?
That's correct.
Where was the home that you lived in?
3744 Long Ridge Avenue, Sherman Oaks.
And were you a salaried employee?
Yes,
did
I
you
was.
receive salary from him?
Yes, I did.
What were your duties in regard to your housekeeping?
I was to look after the children, to take them to and from preschool, school, prepare meals, laundry, be a friend to the children, and be a friend to the family.
And was that including having some sort of a relationship with Dr. Oziel?
Only as housekeeper.
Right. And how long did you remain in that position as housekeeper?
For approximately 5 years.
And during that 5-year period of time, did you continue to reside in Dr. Oziel's house?
Yes, I did.
Did you get to know Dr. Oziel on a intimate basis during that period of time?
Yes, I did.
Did you get to know people who knew him during that time?
Yes, I did.
And also his wife and children?
That's correct.
Yes, remember, I was just going to say this. Remember, Dr. Oziel was married with children and not the sitcom from the 90s, but he was married with children and they he had multiple women that he was having affairs with, including Judalyn Smith, who is the one who secretly recorded the boys' session where they um, essentially confessed to the crimes. So she was secretly hiding and recording their sessions. Not this one. That was Judalyn Smith. This is the other mistress that he had around the same time. She was a live-in, like I said, live-in babysitter, which apparently it started as a babysitter and it led to more because that's what Dr. Oziel does with the women in his life. So he is not the right person because he's the sexual offender of many women and just outright controlling and manipulative of women. Um, it seems like he's not the greatest witness for the state, but that is what they have. That's their star witness. Anyways, this is one of his mistresses while he was married with kids.
Correct.
And approximately when was it that you left his employment?
In 1986, October of 1986.
And did you remain in the Los Angeles area after you left his employment?
No.
Where did you go?
I returned to Vancouver, Canada.
And did you continue to have contact with Dr. Oziel after you returned to Vancouver? And by contact, I mean telephone contact, in-person visits, or letter writing?
Yes.
And approximately, for what period of time after 1986 did you continue to have contact with him?
Until 1990.
And could you tell me the nature of that contact?
There were several contacts.
Just generally, tell me what those were.
They
A
were
phone call or in person, is that what you're asking?
Yes. I
in
just want
phone
to know what
call.
the nature was. It phone calls, in-person visits?
in-person and phone calls.
Right. And approximately how many do you think, how many phone calls did you have with him from 86 to 1990?
Approximately 20.
And visits?
2.
And was there a period of time when you moved back to the house, or was that the last time you were in the house with him?
That was the last time.
And since having that contact with him, have you kept up on Dr. Oziel at all? Read things about him?
Yes, I have.
All right. And based upon your knowledge of him, do you have it?
He's had a lot of, let's say, scandals that have followed him regarding women that he treated, and even men that he treated that he took home improvement services in exchange while he lived at his home in exchange for mental health services. So Dr. Oziel is extremely unethical, or at least blurs the ethics line is completely blurred to Dr. Oziel. Just saying.
An opinion as to his honesty or dishonesty?
I believe that Dr. Oziel does not know the difference between truth and a lie.
And so do you have an opinion as to whether he's honest or dishonest?
He's very dishonest.
Now, sometime in April or May of 1990, did you have a telephone conversation with Dr. Oziel which concerned his involvement in this case, that is the Menendez case?
Yes.
And can you give me your best approximation of when that telephone conversation took place?
March or April.
Of 1990?
Yes.
And where were you when you received the telephone call or placed the telephone call?
I was at 1831 McSpadden Avenue, Vancouver, BC.
And did he call you or did you call him?
He called me.
And during the course of that conversation with Dr. Oziel, did he brag to you about being a media star with reference to this case?
Yes, he did.
What did he say?
He said
Did he brag to you about being a media star in this case? Yes, he did, was the answer.
watch him on television, that he would be on Hard Copy or one of those shows, that he was a media star, that he was a key witness in a murder trial, and that he was a doctor helping the people who were involved in the trial, and that reporters were around his house, outside his garage, following him all over.
Did he seem happy or sad about that situation?
He seemed very happy. He seemed as if he was smiling over the phone.
Objections to speculation.
All right, the objection is sustained. The answer is straight.
Can you characterize, based on the tone of his voice and your knowledge of him, whether he had any reaction to his involvement in being a media star?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes. Based on your knowledge of his voice and the content of the conversation, could you get any sense as to whether he was happy or sad or had any attitude about his involvement in the case as a media star?
Objection calls for speculation of foundation.
Overruled.
He was happy, and I based my opinion on the fact that he was laughing. He seemed very happy about it.
Thank you. That would be the offer. Sure.
All right, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. McPhee, you indicated that you started to work for the Oziels in 1981, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did Mrs. Oziel hire you as a babysitter?
That's correct. I think it was both of them together. She initially hired me, but it was on his approval.
Okay, she actually did the hiring.
That's correct.
And you stayed with the Oziels for 5 years?
That's correct.
When you left, you stole some property from them, isn't that correct?
No, that's not correct.
Do you recall the grand theft police report?
Yes, I do.
In 1986, were you arrested on that, based on that report?
Yes, I was.
And that was for grand theft?
That's correct.
Did your case go to court?
Yes, it is, but I don't believe that was 1986. I believe I was living in Los Angeles at the time.
Were you arrested more than once?
Yes, I was.
How many times were you arrested based on reports by the Oziels?
Twice.
And what were they for?
One was for vandalism and one was for grand theft. Oh, excuse me, 3 times.
Okay.
So she's his mistress, his live-in babysitter, and he also gets her charged with crimes against him. I have a feeling this was his way to manipulate her, if anything. I don't necessarily believe that she may have been doing these things, but I don't know. Let's see.
Vandalism, grand theft, what else?
Theft of 2 suitcases.
Was that when you left in 1986?
That's correct. That's correct.
Prior to that, you had 2 other arrests by LAPD. Was that
Theft of 2 suitcases. So did she take some suitcases to pack things and then all of a sudden she gets charged with theft of suitcases? Really? Maybe she was trying to leave and Oziel was like, "Oh, you ain't leaving me." And he called the police and was like, "Officer, she's stealing my suitcases." That's the only thing I can think of. Why she would steal suitcases? This is so ridiculous. Why does she have charges against her for stealing suitcases against the Oziels?
correct? Based on
I think those are just the ones I just spoke of.
Vandalism and grand theft.
That's correct.
What was the vandalism?
For breaking a window in the Oziel home,
And what was the grand theft?
for stealing a car, stealing the Oziel's car.
Now, did all of these offenses occur in 1986?
No,
The theft of the 2 suitcases, was that in 1986?
that's correct.
When was the vandalism?
I'm not really quite sure. 1981, 1982.
And the grand theft?
I'm not sure also. Maybe 84, 85.
And that was of a car?
Could Oziel have lent her his car and then they get into a fight and he's like, "Oh, officer, she stole my car." I mean, does she look like a grand theft auto person? Does she look like someone who can steal cars? I don't know.
Car?
That's correct.
And you've indicated that you've been watching Dr. Oziel, or reading about Dr. Oziel, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And he knew that he was going to be on TV?
No, I did not.
You did not?
No.
Do you know 2 women by the name of Julian Smith and Alex Corey?
I know one of them. I know both of them, but I've never met one of them.
You have been on Diane Sawyer, have you not?
On Diane Sawyer?
Yes. Prime time? I'm sorry, prime time.
Yes.
When was that?
I believe it was September of 92.
92?
Excuse me, is that a question?
Is that correct?
I'm not sure. I believe so. I'm not sure on the date.
Prior to going on prime time in September of 1992, did you ever talk to Julian Smith or Alex Corey?
I spoke with Alex Curry once
When was that?
in 1986, or 1988, sorry.
And to Julian Smith?
In 91.
1990 or 91?
I'm not, 91, I would say.
Now, you spoke to each of these women before you ever went on prime time, isn't that correct? Before you were ever interviewed for that?
No, that is not correct.
When were you interviewed for prime time?
July of
I'm
9.
going to check that this point is going way beyond the offer proof. Yes, we can open all this up.
Okay, counsel, let's not argue it. Objection sustained. Why don't you confine yourself to the area of the inquiry here?
Would I clarify one point?
Wow, he actually sustained an objection even though he had to reprimand her in front of everyone. Okay, counsel, let's not argue.
Which is, I wasn't objecting here because I assumed the court wanted to hear where it was going with the information. And I would have some comments about this general line of attack, but I didn't wish to be understood as waiving objection.
Okay, all
I
right.
thought the court wanted to hear.
Yeah, but I don't want to go into extensive examination.
I'm just trying to ascertain how you got certain information.
Why don't you answer that?
Okay, let's not speak with each other on the record here. If you have something to address the court, you can do that. Otherwise, you can speak quietly among yourselves. All right, your next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. McPhee, do you hate Dr. Oziel?
I dislike him strongly.
Ms. McPhee, did you call and threaten Dr. Oziel sometime in August of 1990?
No, that is not correct.
Do you remember a phone call between yourself and Dr. Oziel about August 30th, 1990?
Yes, I do.
Have you heard that tape?
No, I have not.
What do you remember about that conversation?
I asked Dr. Oziel if he was taping the conversation, and I was swearing a lot, and
That's something that Oziel is known to do, is secretly tape conversations. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
I was yelling a lot, and I was bringing up issues of the contents of our relationship and questioning him. Basically, that was what the tape was about.
You had a sexual relationship with him?
That's correct.
And at some point you broke off the relationship with him, isn't that correct?
No, that's not correct.
At some point you stopped having sexual relations with him?
Yes.
And did that
Right, this
make-
is basically all covered in that Exhibit 173, Mr. Priolo.
Mr. McPhee, didn't you say on the tape that in response to Dr. Oziel telling you to quit threatening him, to quit calling him, you said that you were going to, quote, fuck him up the ass, unquote?
Well, I'm going to object to this. You know, we asked counsel before this hearing to hear the tape, and Mrs. Pizzang said, I'm not going to use the tape, I'm not going to use the tape, and she came over and told us what was on it. So,
Your Honor, I believe I'm handling this witness.
Okay, again, it doesn't matter what's on the tape, it's what she said, so let's rephrase the question.
Did you say in this conversation that we're speaking about that you were going to, quote, fuck him up the ass?
I could have.
And,
I swore a lot on that tape.
and you were upset.
I was very upset.
And
I didn't know actually he was taping it. I just assumed he was taping it because he had taped a conversation prior to that. So I just assumed that he was taping it because the way he was talking sounded as if he was taping it. His questions.
in fact, you admitted to the grand theft.
I think he was trying to get her to say something threatening because that's what manipulators do. And if he was purposely taping her, he might have been trying to entrap her to say something specific. So she might not have been wrong that he, she knew he was trying to get her to talk.
on that tape, correct?
I have no idea. I haven't heard the tape. I don't know what's on it. I don't know what I said. I said a lot of things, I'm sure.
And he had called you in response to some threatening phone calls by you, isn't that correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did you ever make any calls threatening him?
No, I have not. It all depends on what you mean by threats also. What does threats mean?
Had you called him prior to this particular phone call?
In what year? Like, what?
This is 1990, on or about August 30th.
No.
You did not call him?
Before 1990. Is that what you're asking me?
Yes.
I called him.
I'm going to object on the question today. She needs to know what's between the
Okay, counsel, let's not argue.
That's a weird question too, but okay.
Why should we ask the question?
Fairway, Young. Just prior to August 30th, 1990, had you made threatening phone calls to Dr. Oziel?
No.
Had you made any phone calls to Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
How many phone calls did you make?
I'm going to object
But that's like a 10-year.
Vegas time.
Overall, she was answering it. It's a 10-year period.
That's a 10-year period of time. I'm sure I called him lots of times in a 10-year period of time.
Just prior to this August 30th, 1990 conversation, did you call him?
No.
You did not?
No.
When was the time previous to this August 30th, 1990 conversation that you had called him?
I called him on a number of occasions.
When was the time just before August 30th, 1990?
I don't recall. I couldn't give you a specific date.
Can you say whether it was in a month, 2 months?
No, I couldn't.
Do you recall in this conversation that he asked you to quit calling him and threatening him and said enough is enough, and you stated enough is never enough for you?
No, actually, that was Alex Curry who called me and told me that she was Jerry's fiance and to stop calling. And that was in about 1988.
Wait, okay. There's another woman named Alex Curry who was a fiance of Oziel's? Oh my God, this guy. How did he even get these women is what I want to know. How?
And that's the only time I spoke with Miss Curry.
All right, again, we're getting far afield here. Let's wrap it up.
Okay, can I play this tape?
No, no, not at this point.
I have nothing for this.
All right. Okay, all the jurors are back in court and we're ready to resume. I'm sorry for the
Okay, so that was a voir dire. That was with no jury in the room, and now they've returned. Now that answered our question.
delay, ladies and gentlemen, but we're now ready to proceed. The defense may call its next witness. Yeah. Okay. And
Cynthia McPhee, MCPHED.
So now all that was done outside of the presence of the jury, so now we're going to do it again. But probably not with all that extra stuff that Oziel, or that the prosecution was trying to get into with Oziel and her.
Ms. McPhee, tell the jurors where you live
I live in Vancouver, BC.
at British Columbia in Canada.
That's correct.
Are you a Canadian citizen?
Yes, I am.
And were you born in Canada?
Yes.
And did you live there from the time you were born until about 1981, roughly?
Yes.
In 1981, did you have occasion to move from your home in Vancouver down to the Los Angeles area?
Yes, I did. Yes.
And when you got down here to the Los Angeles area, did you eventually take a job with a person by the name of L. Jerome Oziel?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember approximately when you first took a job with Mr. Oziel?
Approximately May of 1981.
And how old were you at that time?
I was 18.
And what was the job that you took with Mr. Oziel?
Babysitter, housekeeper.
And what did that job involve in terms of your duties?
Taking care of the children, taking them just to preschool, school, making meals, doing household duties and errands.
Was that a live-in job?
Yes, it was.
And where did you live during the time that you worked for Mr. Oziel?
At 3744 Long Ridge Avenue.
And did you actually live inside the house with
Yes.
Mr. Oziel and his family?
Yes.
Where physically in the house did you have your room or your living space?
In the back bedroom.
And was that part of the house where
Yes,
the
it was.
Oziel family lived?
Yes, it was.
And how long did you hold that position?
Until October of 1986.
So from 1981 until 1986, you were living inside the Oziel household? Is that
That's correct.
And during that period of time, did you come to know Mr. Oziel and his family?
Yes, I came to know them very well.
And how would you characterize how well you got to know Mr. Oziel?
I got to know him as well as anybody could know him. I got to know him very intimately.
And when you left your employment in 1986, where did you go after you left the Oziel home?
I went to Vancouver, British Columbia.
And from that point in 1986 up until today, have you remained in Canada?
That's correct.
Living up there?
Yes.
Okay. Had you maintained contact with Mr. Oziel after 1986 when you left his employment, living in his home?
Yes.
And could you describe for the juries what the nature of that contact was, just in terms of whether it was person-to-person meetings or visits, or what exactly it involved in the period between 1986 and following?
I saw him in person twice, and I talked to him on the phone on numerous occasions.
And besides having contact with him, have you kept up with information regarding Dr. Oziel?
Yes, I have.
Do you feel that you have an intimate knowledge of Dr. Oziel as a person?
Absolutely.
And when you were living in the house with Mr. Oziel, would you see him on a daily basis?
Every day.
And would you see him interacting with his wife?
Yes.
Overrule.
Would you see him interacting with his children?
Yes.
And were there times when you were with him by yourself for long periods of time,
Yes.
both inside the house and outside the house?
Yes.
Did you also have occasion to see him interacting with other people outside the home?
Yes.
And based on your knowledge of Mr. Oziel, both in living in his home for a period of 1981 to 1986, and also based on keeping in contact with him after that period of time, do you have an opinion as to whether he is a dishonest or an honest person?
He is the most dishonest person I've ever met.
Thank you very much. That's all I have.
He's not just a dishonest person, he is the most dishonest person she's ever met. That's pretty definitive.
One additional question. Do you like or dislike Dr. Oziel?
I dislike him very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, cross-examination. All right, thank you. You may step down.
Cynthia, see.
Oh, so they didn't even cross her because they couldn't get into all the stuff they wanted to. So they're like, no thanks. She's not worth our time. But really, she pretty much destroyed Oziel. So, but I mean, he did a good job of destroying himself. All right, so this next witness on the stand is named, she's going to be our last one for this episode. And her name is Cynthia Erdelyi. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but she is an investigator. So let's see what she's got to say.
Ynthia, Erdelyi, Erdelyi. Erdelyi, what's your occupation? I'm a licensed private investigator.
How long have you been a private investigator?
Approximately 14 years.
And before that, what was your employment?
As a police officer for Santa Monica,
And how long were you with the Santa Monica PD?
2 years.
Now, are you one of the defense investigators in this case?
I am.
So usually a defense team will have an investigator that helps them investigate certain angles or things that they want to look at on their case. They might go talk to witnesses. They might get affidavits. They might do a whole lot of things for the defense. So it's interesting. They hired their own PI to do this. And let's see what she found out for the defense.
Your Honor, I have 2 video cassettes that I'd like to mark next in order. 355 would be the one that says Route 1, and 356 would be the one that indicates Route 2.
Yes.
And if I might approach the witness.
Yes.
Ms. Early, showing you these 2 video cassettes, first of all, is it your handwriting on the labels?
Yes. And did you participate in the preparation of those two videotapes?
Yes.
And what did those two videotapes contain?
They contain the two routes driven on Sunday, November 7th.
Okay, and when you say Sunday, November 7th, is that 1993?
Yes.
And the routes that you refer to are those routes that begin at 722 North Elm Drive and end, or at least encompass the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium in Santa Monica?
Correct.
And then a return to 722 North Elm Drive?
No, basically, we ended at Santa Monica Civic
Okay,
on
so-
both routes.
All right, so you didn't videotape going back to 722 North Elm Drive?
No.
Okay. And you indicate that these videotapes
This would be from the home to the movie theater, I believe.
were made on November 7th, 1993?
Correct.
And was that the first time that you drove a route emanating from 722 North Elm Drive to ultimately the Santa Monica Civic?
No.
On how many prior occasions had you also driven one or more routes between those two locations?
I drove once and rode along once.
Once before?
Correct.
And what was your purpose in driving this route on these three separate occasions?
On which occasion?
All right, well, first of all, you did it on November 7th, 1993.
Correct.
What was the previous time did you drive on November 7th?
Yes, I did.
And was there a previous occasion when you also drove?
Yes.
And do you recall the date of that?
The Sunday before October 31st.
And was there a previous occasion when you rode along?
Yes.
And when was that?
The previous Sunday, and I'm sorry I don't have a calendar in front of me to tell you the date.
October 24th?
Correct.
Okay. And on each of those three consecutive Sundays, did you drive two different routes between the Elm Drive, former home of the Menendez family, and the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium?
Yes.
So you drove a total of six routes over the course of three consecutive Sundays.
Yes.
Sorry. I always like have my hand hovered over the mouse, ready to pause at any time, and then I accidentally left or right click constantly, and I have twitching too, so that's part of it. So that's probably why I do that. So I apologize.
And on all 3 days, all 3 Sundays when you made these drives, did you drive at night?
Yes.
Now, you're aware, are you not, that the shooting in this case occurred approximately 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday night, August 20th, 1989?
Yes.
And are you aware that there was testimony by Lyle Menendez concerning his best recollection of what was done after the shootings, and testimony by Eric Menendez concerning his best recollection?
Yes.
And you're aware that in some details the testimony of each of the brothers is different concerning how they went from one place to another?
Yes.
And is that why you made up videotapes of 2 different routes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, to your right, although only X-ray vision could read it from here, are 2 charts. What do those charts contain?
Pardon me?
What do the charts contain?
They consist of mileages and driving times and routes taken and speeds traveled and speed limits.
And for what? For what drive?
I refer to Route 1 as
Okay.
the
Is
route.
this the November 7th stuff that's on the videotape?
Correct.
Okay. So on those charts is in printed form what was done on November 7th, which is reflected in the videotape so you can actually see what you're doing.
Correct.
All right. Now, if you would just, we're going to go through the detail, but first if you would establish for the juries what is the general sequence of what you've indicated as Route 1. And, Your Honor, does the court feel we should mark these charts as exhibits just for the purpose of the record?
All right, if you care to do so, we will 357 and 358.
Okay, so 357 will be the one that is labeled Route 1 on the left. And then 358 will be Route 2 on the right. If you can generally describe to the juries, Ms. Erdely, what the path of Route 1 is.
Route 1 starts at 722 North Elm and going eastbound on Lomitas to Sunset.
Now you're giving too many details. Where's the first stop after leaving 722 North Elm on Route 1? Just
The first
general.
stop I timed was on Mulholland Drive, just west of Coldwater Canyon.
And was that an effort to emulate, if you will, or call it that, to recreate, if you will, going from the house on Elm Drive to Mulholland Drive to dispose of some guns?
Correct.
And after and then there's a stop on Mulholland Drive, correct?
Correct.
And then after Mulholland Drive, where does Route 1 pick up? Where does it go then?
I headed back southbound on Coldwater Canyon, Beverly Drive, and back down to the Century City Shopping Center.
And that's to go to the AMC movie theaters at Century City. So that's the second stop?
Correct.
And is the third stop, strike that. What is the third stop on Route 1?
The third stop would be the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium.
And is there, factored into Route 1, a fourth stop at a gas station, which is a low rectangular building with some dumpsters at the back?
Correct.
And is that stop made on the videotape before the Santa Monica Civic or after?
It's after, and only still photos were taken.
With respect to getting from the theaters to the Santa Monica Civic on Route 1, how was that accomplished? Was it on streets or on freeway?
On the streets.
And now, just generally, so the jury can orient themselves before you go through that, what was Route 2?
Route 2 also started at 722 North Elm, and the first stop was at the AMC Theaters in the Century City Shopping Center.
And the second stop?
And the second stop was on Mulholland Drive, just west of Coldwater Canyon,
And the third stop?
the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium.
And what was the method used to get from Mulholland to the Santa Monica Civic on Route 2?
South on Coldwater Canyon to Beverly Drive, and then westbound on Sunset Boulevard to the 405 freeway south, and then on the 10 freeway.
Santa Monica Freeway?
Correct.
So Route 2 has a freeway component.
Correct.
And is it factored into this trip also a stop at a gas station with a low rectangular building and dumpsters for clothing disposal purposes?
Yes.
Now, was it your understanding when you commenced these routes that you were trying to establish whether these stops could be made within a set time period?
Yes.
And what was your understanding of the set time period?
We were looking at 67 minutes.
67 minutes from what to what?
From the time of the shooting until the call was made to Perry Berman at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium.
The call made from the Santa Monica Civic?
Correct.
Now, when you drove these two routes on November 7th, I take it you timed every segment?
Not every stop, but
Not every segment?
every
Stop one,
segment
stop
was
two.
timed, correct.
Okay. And you also allowed time for the stop at the gas station and the changing of clothes and the dumping of things in the dumpster, is that correct?
Correct.
And when you did that on November 7th, were all the tasks completed on Route 1 within 67 minutes?
Yes.
Were all the tasks completed on Route 2 within 67 minutes?
Yes.
When you did this previously, on Sunday, October 31st, you also drove a Route 1 and a Route 2 on that occasion?
Correct.
Were all the tasks completed on both routes on October 31st within 67 minutes?
Yes.
And when you rode along to the drive on October 24th on two routes, were all the tasks that we've designated completed within 67 minutes on each route?
Yes.
So is it fair to say that all 6 times that you drove a route from the Elm Drive house to the Santa Monica Civic, you were able to complete everything within 67 minutes?
Yes.
Now, if you would take the juries through the specifics, let's turn to Route 1.
So basically, the boys, whatever version, because apparently they testified to 2 different versions of 2 different routes, but either route, whichever one is right, whichever one is telling not necessarily the truth, but has the better recollection of the memories of that night, because one could just be not remembering. Like maybe the one that didn't drive doesn't remember the route as well, so they might have said it differently. I mean, that's human nature to not remember all details because we're not perfect and we're not a computer. So it's totally valid. Either side, either if whether Lyle's telling the accurate details or if Eric's telling the accurate details of what that route was afterwards, then either one is valid and could be accurate and correct. So they're not necessarily lying. It could just be that their recollection is a little different, but they still could have done whatever they needed to do in that time.
And is there something that you, first of all, did you make note when you started of the traffic conditions and the weather conditions?
Yes, I did.
And on the night that you videotaped, Sunday, November 7th, what were the traffic conditions for Route 1?
Moderate to light.
What were the weather conditions?
Clear and dry.
And do you have any reason to believe that it was anything other than clear and dry on August 20th, 1989?
No.
Now, what is the portion that you refer to as lap 1?
Lap 1 would be starting from the house on Elm Drive and going to the spot on Mulholland Drive.
And would it also include a period of time to complete the activity on Mulholland Drive, which is throwing the guns basically down the hill?
Yes.
Okay. And at what time did you actually begin lap 1 of Route 1 on November 7th, 1993?
At 8:37 p.m.
And did you treat 8:37 as the time of the shooting or as sometime after the shooting when you left the location?
I would treat that as 4 minutes after the shooting.
Okay, so you allowed for 4 minutes after the shooting before you left the location. Is that correct?
Correct.
And where did you go at the point when you left the location?
I'm sorry, from leaving where?
The start
Elm
place,
Drive?
Elm Drive. You leave at 8:37, and on this route, you're assuming that the shooting occurs at 8:33, correct?
Correct.
Because you're leaving 4 minutes after the shooting.
Yes.
All right. So at 8:37, you go where?
We proceeded up to Mulholland Drive.
I know, but now I want you to give me the specifics.
Okay. We went northbound on Elm to Lomitas.
And Lomitas is the first corner?
Correct.
Okay. And did you make a turn?
Yes.
And what direction did you turn, right or left?
Right.
And did you turn right because it was your understanding that it had been testified to that there was a right turn made?
That was my understanding.
Okay. And then after turning right, where did you go?
Proceeded to Sunset Boulevard.
Now, in order to get to Coldwater Canyon from Lomitas and Sunset Boulevard, do you have to go westbound or eastbound to actually get to Coldwater? Well, let me ask you, is Coldwater west of there or east of there?
Coldwater would be west.
And can you make the left turn to go west at the corner of Lomitas and Sunset?
No.
What do you have to do to get to go west?
Proceed eastbound on Sunset to Hillcrest and make a U-turn.
Now, it would take less time, would it not, if you didn't make that right on Lomitas? If you went straight up Elm Drive, then you could make the left onto Sunset. Is that correct?
I would assume so.
But you made the right turn because that's what had been testified to?
Correct.
Even though it would add time to the journey?
Correct.
All right. So you make a U-turn at Hillcrest, and then you traveled,
Westbound on Sunset.
and did you observe the speed limits?
Yes.
And what was the speed limit on Sunset?
The posted speed limit was 35.
And was traffic flowing at 35, or was it moving faster?
We were going a little faster.
Was all the traffic going a little faster?
Yes.
Were you keeping up with the traffic?
Yes.
So what speeds did you travel on that piece when you're going westbound on Sunset?
35 to 45.
Did you make any effort, by the way, Ms. Erdley, through these routes that you videotaped to go as fast as you possibly could?
I wouldn't say as fast as I possibly could, but I was exceeding the speed limit most of the time.
Why?
I felt someone in a panic, and driving this would most likely be speeding.
Objection overruled. The answer was
Were you
no.
going with the traffic?
And that also, yes.
Do you recall the first trip that you did on October 24th when you rode along?
Yes.
Do you recall on that trip going up Coldwater Canyon finding that the cars were traveling very fast on Coldwater, both north and south?
Yes.
Faster than the car you were riding in was going.
Yes.
The cars were even passing you on that trip.
Yes.
So you weren't trying to outspeed all the other cars on the road.
Sustain.
Actually, the driver on that occasion did not outspeed all the other
Okay,
cars.
again,
on the
that's the
road.
same second leading question.
Did the driver on that occasion pass other cars on the road?
Not that I recall.
Now, let me ask you this. What's the, take out the freeway section, what's the fastest, if you can recall, that you drove on any segment of Route 1 on the streets?
May I refer to my report for a moment? Approximately 45 miles an hour.
So 45 miles an hour was your idea of speeding?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Because it's in some places 10 miles above the speed limit?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so you traveled westbound on Sunset Boulevard and traveling 35 to 45 miles an hour. And then, was there a street where you made a turn?
Yes.
And where did you make the turn?
I made a right turn on Beverly Drive.
And does Beverly Drive lead to Coldwater Canyon Drive?
Yes, it does.
And did you then take Coldwater Canyon up to the top of the mountain to Mulholland?
Yes, I did.
And on Coldwater Canyon, what were the speeds that you were traveling?
35 to 45 miles an hour.
And, okay, and when you got to Mulholland Drive, was there another turn?
Yes.
And how did you turn?
Left.
And is that to go west?
Correct.
And at some point on Mulholland, did you stop?
Yes.
And was there some reason why you stopped where you did?
Yes.
And what was the reason?
I was instructed to proceed about 2 minutes, or approximately an eighth of a mile, and then stop and turn around.
8/10 of a mile?
That's what it came out to on my odometer.
And was that the first turnout?
Correct.
The first turnout on the right, on the valley side?
Correct.
And after you stopped at that first turnout, did you wait?
Yes, I did.
And did you wait how long?
2 minutes.
And then did you resume the drive?
Yes, I did.
And where did you go on the next lap? That's lap 1, is it not, up to Mulholland and waiting 2 minutes?
Correct.
Now lap 2, at the top of Mulholland, by the way, did you turn the car around?
Yes, I did.
So did you head back to Coldwater Canyon?
Yes, I did.
And, okay, did you then go down Coldwater Canyon back into Beverly Hills?
Yes.
And would you describe after getting down Coldwater Canyon, did you then get back to Beverly Drive?
Yes.
Okay, and then where did you go?
Then to Santa Monica Boulevard and right or west, and then to Avenue of the Stars and left or south, and then right on Santa Monica Boulevard south and into the valet parking circle at the Century City Parking Center.
Now, There are no meters in the valet parking circle at Century City.
No.
And did you give your car to the valet, or did you just leave it there?
No, I just left it there.
And did you proceed up to the theater area?
Yes, I did.
And did you purchase a ticket?
Yes, I did.
And how long did it take to purchase the ticket?
4 minutes.
Now, on previous occasions, preceding Sundays, when you drove these routes, did it take you less time to purchase tickets?
Yes.
Did you put in the chart, however, the longest time it took you of all the trips to purchase tickets?
Yes.
And that was 4 minutes.
Correct.
Now, just to backtrack for a moment, to go to lap 1, okay? How long did it take to get from the house on Elm Drive to complete the 2-minute wait at Mulholland?
Well, I documented the elapsed driving time.
And that was 11 minutes of elapsed driving time?
Correct.
And then 2 minutes of waiting time?
Correct.
And you added on to the beginning 4 minutes of waiting time after the shooting.
Correct.
So all of that segment was 17 minutes?
Correct.
Okay. Now, how long was the driving time after the 2-minute wait, when you went from the top of Mulholland to Century City?
13 minutes.
So that was 13 minutes driving time, and then there were 4 minutes to purchase the tickets?
Correct.
So now we're at 34 minutes total?
Correct.
And after purchasing the tickets, where did you proceed on Route 1?
I proceeded southbound on Santa Monica Boulevard South to Century Park West.
Let me ask you a question. You've talked about Santa Monica Boulevard South. Are there 2 streets that are called Santa Monica Boulevard in Beverly Hills?
Correct.
And one of them is as you're getting into Century City, for example, one of them is to the north, and then there's like a divider.
Correct.
I think there's some railroad tracks on that divider, are there not? There used to be.
I don't recall if there are.
And then there's Santa Monica Boulevard, the southerly one.
Correct.
Now, in Beverly Hills, are these also referred to as Big Santa Monica and Little Santa Monica?
Yes.
Okay. And is the entry to the Century City Mall and the AMC Theater area and the valet parking area off of the southernmost Santa Monica Boulevard?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you pulled out of the valet parking area and made a left on Santa Monica, and this is the southerly Santa Monica Boulevard, is that correct?
Correct.
And then did you make another turn at the first corner?
Correct.
And how did you turn?
Left.
And is that Century Park West?
Yes.
And where did you take Century Park West to?
Southbound to Olympic Boulevard, and then right or westbound on Olympic.
And how far did you take Olympic Boulevard?
All the way out to Santa Monica.
And what was the elapsed driving time between the Century City theaters and the Santa Monica Civic?
17.
On the street, on Olympic Boulevard.
17 minutes.
And did you also add in time to walk to telephones at the Santa Monica Civic?
Yes, I did.
And how much time did you factor in to walk to the telephones?
2 minutes.
Now, did you actually do this? Did you park your car in the parking lot of the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium, leave the car, walk inside the Civic to the bank of telephone?
Yes, I did.
And how long did it take you to do it?
2 minutes.
And did it take you 2 minutes each time you did it on each of those Sundays?
Yes.
And did you also factor in additional time for stopping at the gas station and dumping clothes?
Yes.
And how much additional time for that?
4 minutes.
Now, is there the gas station that I've been, asked you about with the low rectangular building and the dumpsters, is there such a gas station in Santa Monica?
Yes.
Is there one in close proximity to the Santa Monica Civic?
Yes.
Now, how close is it actually?
1 block. It's at 4th and Pico.
And factoring in all of those times to stop at the gas station and dump the clothes, on this route, what was the total time from start to finish?
The driving and activity times came to 57 minutes.
So that was 10 minutes less than the goal.
Yes.
So on Route 1, you could have actually added another 10 minutes if you wanted to hanging around the Elm Drive house, and you would have still made it in 67 minutes.
Correct.
Or you could have added more time to dump the clothes.
Correct.
Or more time to dump the guns.
Yes.
Now, with respect to Route 2. Route 2, I take it, also started at 722 North Elm Drive.
Correct.
Now, this particular route, when you drove it on November 7th, 1993, started at 9:55 p.m.
Correct.
And on this particular route, what is the first lap? You go from the house to where first?
The first lap starts at the house and goes to the Century City Shopping Center.
So this is from the house to the theater first.
Pardon me?
From the house to the theater.
Correct.
And what is the driving time, or what was the driving time that night from the house to the theater?
6 minutes.
And in fact, Ms. Erdley, on the prior Sundays when you also made this trip, was the driving time from the house to the theater 6 minutes each time?
Yes.
And did you again factor in a waiting time before leaving the house?
Yes.
And was that again 4 minutes?
Yes.
And did you then also factor in the 4 minutes for purchasing a ticket?
Correct.
Even though on prior occasions it had only taken you 3 minutes to purchase tickets?
Yes.
And then from the theater So lap 1 was 14 minutes, is that correct, from the house to the completion of the buying of the tickets?
Correct.
Okay, then lap 2 was from the theater to where?
To Mulholland Drive.
And what was the route that you took? What streets did you drive to get from the theater to Mulholland Drive?
Eastbound on Santa Monica Boulevard South to Beverly Drive and left or north, then to Coldwater Canyon and left, or basically northbound, and then to Mulholland Drive.
Okay, and on this occasion, when you went up Coldwater to Mulholland, did you go to the same turnout as in Route 1 to stop and wait for the time period for getting rid of the guns?
Yes, I did.
And did you, on this occasion, again, turn the car around so you'd be heading back down Coldwater?
Yes.
And what was the driving time from from Century City to the top of Mulholland?
15 minutes.
And then did you also factor in the 2 minutes to simulate getting rid of the guns?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you then drive back down Coldwater to Sunset Boulevard?
Yes, I did.
Now, on this route as well, on Route 2, apart from the freeway time, was your top speed 45 miles an hour?
If I may just review my report for a moment. Correct.
Now, when you took Coldwater Canyon South to Sunset on this one, it's lap 2? Is that part of lap 2 of Route 2?
I think you mean lap 3. Would be starting from Mulholland Drive and heading south on Coldwater Canyon. Would be the last lap.
Okay. Okay, so you take Coldwater to Sunset, is that correct?
Correct.
What do you do on Sunset?
And then go westbound or right on Sunset Boulevard. And I took that to the 405 freeway and got on the 405 freeway south. And then took that to the 10 Santa Monica freeway and took that right or west into Santa Monica and used the 4th Street exit.
Now, what was your top speed on the freeways?
62.
Okay. And you got off at 4th Street, and did you then proceed to the Santa Monica Civic?
Yes.
Did you directly enter the Santa Monica Civic?
No, I did not.
Why not?
Pardon me?
Why not?
I was informed and instructed that the boys had gone by the entrance once, so I tried to do the same thing. I mean, not tried, I did. I went by the entrance once and back around the block.
And was that true of every single time that you drove these laps, including Route 1, that you didn't just directly pull into the Santa Monica Civic, you actually tried to simulate being lost and not being able to find the entrance and going completely around that whole block?
Correct.
And is it a very long route around, if you miss the entrance to the Santa Monica Civic, do you have to go all the way past the Santa Monica Civic Center and then completely back around past the freeway off-ramps, and then completely back around Pico Boulevard to get back into the Santa Monica Civic?
Correct.
So it's a fairly lengthy detour.
Fairly?
And you did it each and every time that you drove these routes?
Yes.
Okay. And then after doing this simulated getting lost and going back, did you then pull into the lot of the Santa Monica Civic?
Yes, I did.
And when you got there, did you again factor in time to walk up to the payphones to place a call?
Yes, I did.
And did you factor in time to dump the clothes at the Arco station a block away?
Yes.
And did you factor in that time to dump the clothes as if that occurred before the telephone call was made?
Yes, I did.
And now on the total for route, and again, was that 4 minutes for dumping the clothes? Was that 4 minutes for dumping the clothes?
Yes.
And was it 2 minutes to walk to the phone?
Correct.
And what was the elapsed driving time for lap 3 from the Mulholland Drive start point to the Santa Monica Civic?
29 minutes.
And what was the total time for all of Route 2?
All of Route 2 elapsed driving and activity time was 66 minutes.
Now, if the dumping of the clothes at the gas station occurred after the telephone call, in other words, if you take it out of this segment, then would it have been 62 minutes before one got to the payphone at the Santa Monica Civic to place the call?
Correct.
Well then. Have a moment. At the Century City Mall, is there a section, you said you pulled into the area of the valet parking area. Is there a long driveway area before you actually get to where the valets take the cars?
It's a circle, fairly long.
Okay. And is there a staircase right in that circle that leads right up onto the mall?
Yes, there is.
And when you get to the top of that staircase at the mall, can you see the theater ticket
Yes.
booth in front of you?
Yes.
Now, is that... Okay. Never mind. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination?
Bertolli, before preparing the videotape, did you receive a videotape from the...
Oh my God, look at her outfit. Like, dressing like a baby. Sorry, that like lapel, like that's what little kids wore, my age. That's so, oh, and her headband. She's got the best 90s fashion, early 90s fashion. Very chic, even though it was like a terrible fashion. Everything was just, ugh. And the hair, look how big the witness's hair is.
Prosecution.
Yes, I did.
And about how long before you prepared your videotape was it that you received the videotape prepared by the prosecution of this route?
Should object to the form of the question. There's no foundation for what is on the prosecution.
Sustained.
Well, okay. You received a videotape from the prosecution which displayed driving. Would that be correct to say?
Yes.
And did you examine that videotape before you set out to make your videotape?
Object to the form of the question, Dave.
Yes.
Now, I believe when's the first time that you ever attempted to replicate Route 2?
October 24th.
And before either one of the defendants in this case testified, had you driven the route?
No.
It was only after their testimony that you began to drive the route on October the 24th?
Correct.
Now, in preparing yourself to drive Route 2, did you examine the testimony of Lyle Menendez?
No, I was instructed on what to do by Attorney Abramson. I did not examine testimony.
Now, I believe that you factored in certain times for activities. Now, in other words, you drove the routes and you were actually able to verify through your own senses how long it took you to get from point A to point B, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you documented that on the videotape and also in this diagram that you have on the board, correct?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Now, you were given times such as 4 minutes and 2 minutes for activities such as burying the guns, burying the guns and taking the clothes off and waiting after the homicide in order to set out on the route. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And who gave you the times of 4 minutes and 2 minutes for these particular activities that you could not document yourself?
The 4 minutes to dump clothes was my own timing to drive over to the AMP and Mini Mart and give it a reasonable time. And the 2 minutes was discussed as a reasonable time with Ms. Abramson as being able to throw guns out.
Well, when you drove up to the top of, to Coldwater up to Mulholland and turned left on Mulholland and you went approximately 8/10 of a mile, did you arrive at the 8/10 of a mile because that's where the first turnout was or because someone told you that's how far to go?
That's what I was instructed to do.
Okay, do you know where the information came from that it was 8/10 of a mile from the intersection of Coldwater and Mulholland?
That's what it came out to on my odometer.
All right, well, what were your instructions in terms of where you were supposed to stop on Mulholland?
My instructions were approximately 7/10 of a mile.
You were told to go 7/10 of a mile?
Correct.
Who told you that?
Attorney Abramson.
All right, did she tell you from where she got the distance of 7/10 of a mile?
It was my understanding that it was from testimony.
All right, and so you went 7/10 of a mile, and then you waited for, I think you said 2 minutes. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you notice when you were up there that there was no lighting at all from street lamps or houses in that particular area?
Your Honor, this is not evidence.
Trying to visualize it in my mind. It's pretty dark up there, and there's lighting across the street where I turned around.
Did you notice, now at that particular point where you stopped, did the hill go down or did it go up on the valley side of Mulholland?
It went down.
All right, did you see a lot of brush there?
I didn't get out to examine the brush.
Okay. Did you make any kind of physical examination as to how difficult it would be to go down the hill towards the valley and find a place to bury guns?
Object to the form of the question.
No, I did not.
All right, so did you just sit in the car, wait a little bit, and then turn the car around?
Correct.
And it was pretty dark up there, wasn't it?
Objection, that's been answered.
There was lighting across the street, and I can't remember what the name of that neighborhood or business is there where I turned around. There's some lighting there.
All right, but you don't know whether the lighting would have shined down on the side of Mulholland towards the valley if one were going down there to bury guns, do you?
No, I did not go down there.
All right, so when you arrived at the figure of 2 minutes, where did you get 2 minutes from?
As a reasonable time to throw out guns.
All right, based upon what?
On our judgment.
All right, did you consider the idea of secreting the gun some way? That is, either burying them or covering them or something like that?
No.
Okay. And do you know, when you went out that night, was it a full moon on any of these occasions when you drove this route?
I didn't make note, so I can't recall.
And do you know whether or not it was a full moon on the night of August the 20th of 1989?
No, I do not.
Okay. So you waited in your car for a couple minutes and then you went back down, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, when you arrived at the notion of 4 minutes after the shooting to start your driving, from where did you get 4 minutes?
That's what I was instructed to do by Attorney Abramson.
All right, and so she told you just to wait 4 minutes, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, you indicated 4 minutes was something that you arrived at as a reasonable period of time to get rid of the clothes, is that correct?
Correct.
Did you actually physically take off a set of clothes, like a pants or something like that, to see how long it would take you to do it?
No, I did not.
Okay, and did you search through your car to look for things to throw away in addition to throwing away clothes?
No, basically I just stood there.
Okay, so you didn't have the testimony of either Lyle or Eric Menendez to follow along as you were trying to recreate the route. Would that be fair to say?
Correct.
Now, I believe you indicated as well that you attempted to drive around the Santa Monica Civic because of what fact?
Because I was informed that Lyle and Eric had gone past the entrance once to the Santa Monica Civic.
Were you aware of Lyle Menendez's testimony that he got lost?
I was made aware of that by Ms. Abramson, yes.
Now, when you went to Century City to purchase the movie tickets, did you notice that there were no parking meters anywhere around Century City?
I only saw one street being Century Park West, so that would be the only one, and no, I did not see any parking meters on that street.
Did you see any place where you could park and leave a car aside from the place that you've described as the valet parking area?
No, not on the street I was on.
And did you notice that all the curbs there are painted red?
I'm going to object. I think this is getting much more what street we're talking about.
Do you notice on the street where the valet parking is that all the curbs are painted red there?
Yes.
Now, when you went to the Santa Monica Civic at the end of all of your routes, did you park your car, go to the box office? Excuse me, just a moment. I think I have the wrong notes here. When you went out there, did you to the Santa Monica Civic? Did you park your car, go to the box office, look around, then go back to the car, and then go back and make the phone call at the phone booth?
No.
And when you went all these times to the Santa Monica Civic, and I believe you indicated every single time it took you the same period of time to get in there, did you notice whether the parking lot was full or empty?
I'm going to object to the form of the question.
I'll ask it again. Ms. Erdely, when you went to the Santa Monica Civic and all the times you drove the route and you parked the car, was the parking lot full or empty?
There were just a few cars in it.
Were there any kind of events that were being held at the Santa Monica Civic at the time that you did any of these routes?
One was just finishing, and so actually when I was there was nothing going on.
When you went to the Century City Mall in order to buy the movie tickets, did you ever go underneath to the underground parking there?
No, I did not.
Okay, so you're not familiar with the parking situation underground there, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. May I have a moment, please, Your Honor? Now, can I just ask you, Route 1 you've described as going from the home to the guns to Santa Monica Civic. Is that correct? Well, let me rephrase. I'm sorry. You went from the home to Mulholland to Century City to the Santa Monica Civic.
Correct.
Okay. From where did you get the information that you should travel on that route?
I was instructed by attorney Leslie Abramson.
And when was the first time that you ever drove Route 1?
I rode along on October 24th.
And as to Route 2, who instructed you to go on that particular route, which starts with the home to Century City and then up to Mulholland?
Attorney Abramson.
Was Ms. Abramson with you on any of these drives?
Yes.
How many of them?
One.
Do you remember which one?
October 24th.
I have nothing further to this witness at this time.
Yes, I was the mad driver on October 24th, Miss Erdely.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I was the driver on October 24th. You were the passenger.
Correct.
And on October 24th, in fact, did we encounter rather thick fog at the top of Mulholland?
Yes.
And was it very slow going along Mulholland?
Yes.
And did we still make Route 1 and Route 2 in under 67 minutes?
Yes.
Did we wait a period of time before you proceeded directly to the phones?
Just to park and walk up there.
Did I tell you as we were going along that the times that I was giving you for various things was based upon testimony?
Yes.
And did I indicate to you with respect to Route 1 that Lyle Menendez had testified that he wasn't sure if they had gone to the top of Mulholland and gotten rid of the guns before the theater or after?
Correct.
Is that why we bothered with Route 1?
Objection, lady.
Was it your understanding that we were doing Route 1 because Lyle Menendez wasn't certain in his own memory whether the theater came first or getting rid of the guns came first?
That was my understanding.
And did we drive the streets to Santa Monica because Lyle Menendez's best recollection was that it was streets? Was that your understanding?
Correct.
And did we drive the freeway to Santa Monica because Eric Menendez testified his recollection was the freeway?
Correct.
And was it your understanding that the 2-minute period was because Eric Menendez testified it took 2 minutes to scramble down and get rid of the guns?
That was also my understanding.
And with respect to the 7/10 of the mile, was it from the first drive where traveling to the first turnout on Mulholland took 7/10 of a mile in 2 minutes?
Correct.
Now, you viewed the videotape that Officer Zoller made,
Yes, I did.
and is there a portion of that videotape where he drives for 6 minutes in the underground parking lot of the Century City Mall?
Yes.
And is it?
Talking about background evidence. It's also beyond scope.
All right, to sustained as to the, it's really irrelevant.
So is there any, are you aware of any testimony in this case by either defendant that they ever went into the underground parking area in Century City?
No, I'm not.
I have nothing further on.
Any recross? All right, thank you. May I step down?
Thank you.
All right, let me see counsel at the sidebar. All right, in regards to the defense,
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, Eric Menendez defense rests.
in regards to the Lyle Menendez,
This time, the Menendez defense rests.
all right, the defendants have rested there's going to be rebuttal evidence by the prosecution and then perhaps some more evidence by the defense before all the evidence has been completed. I'll talk to the lawyers more. We were doing it here at the sidebar, but I'll talk to them more about how much longer they expect the evidence phase of the trial to be, and then I'll give you more information, hopefully tomorrow, about that. As far as tomorrow, the first witness who will testify will be before the blue jury only. So we want the blue jury here tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and the
Okay. Blah, blah, blah. We don't need to worry about what he just said. All right, so that is going to conclude it for. Oh, but don't go anywhere because hold on, I want to read you something. So stay here 1 second. All right, so I was curious as we were watching the last few lay witnesses that we're going to see here on the stand. So I wondered if their Beverly Hills home was still standing. And in fact, it was just sold earlier this year. So this article was written March 22nd, 2024, and it's in the Los Angeles Times. It says Beverly Hills mansion where Menendez brothers and their parents sells for 17 million. I don't want to sign up for this. Okay. So the lavish Beverly Hills mansion where the Menendez brothers fatally shot their parents in 1989 has sold for $17 million, exactly 28 years to the day after the brothers were convicted of the crimes. Isn't that weird? So weird that it sold on 28 years to the day. The seven bedroom home, complete with a pool, private tennis courts, and two-story guest house, has been on the market since December, listed at just under 20 million. The seller, telecommunications executive Sam DeLug, bought the house in 2001 for 3.7 million. I'd say he made a good chunk of change on that property. You buy it at 3.7 and you sell it for 17 mil. That's pretty decent. Details of the buyer were not immediately available. A forensic appraiser estimated that the mansion's $17 million sales price was about 25% below prevailing market values. So I wonder if that little tidbit, the fact that the Menendez adults were um, their lives were taken there. I wonder if that has anything to do with the market value. What does this say? Homes where a publicized homicide took place tend to sell at a discount, according to Realtor.com. The Menendez mansion was listed for sale months after the release of the Peacock docuseries Menendez plus Menudo, Boys Betrayed. I talked about that before. It's a very good documentary regarding how Jose Menendez was potentially, as alleged in the documentary, he was also essaying a member of the boy band Menudo, and he talks about his story in there. So it is actually really good. If you have Peacock, I recommend watching it. And the rest just talks about um, the homicides. There's not much else. The mansion was built in 1927 and was redesigned in 1984 by real estate mogul Mark Slotkin, who sold it to Jose in 1988 for $4 million. The Mediterranean-style villa sits on Elm Street within the wealthy 90210 zip code. So there you have it. I was just curious as to if the house was even still standing because I'm always curious about, who lives in those homes. So there you have it. And we don't know the individual who currently lives there, at least not at the time that this was written. This was back in March, but seems like it's a little bit under the market value, but it's still a lot more than the guy bought it for. So, or the current or the most recent owner. Um, but it seems like Jose bought it for 4, so I don't know. It feels like it should be probably more by now than 17, 20 million. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching with me. Stay with me because on Thursday we're going to go over the Dr. Oziel tape, the boys' confession tape. The one that was secretly recorded without their knowledge, and we're going to listen to it and listen to some experts break it down. Experts who we've already heard from on the stand, they're going to be breaking down the tape for us. So make sure you have that notification bell on, and I will see you guys on Thursday. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye now.